Hello, welcome. Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 27 Industrialization, we are continuing our topic Industrialization in India. And subtopic is Industrialization in Post-Independence India. The colonial past very much played a part in the economic path India took, especially under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, the new Prime Minister of India. The link between colonialism and underdevelopment was firmly established. This history made Indian leaders wary of international free trade. Nehru, who was inspired by Fabian socialism and by the Russian example, decided to adopt a socialist pattern of economic development. Much of early economic activity in newly independent India was state-induced and the state controlled. Nehru wanted to adopt her Lord Lasky idea of mixed economy, which he did. The state controlled major industries and public related services. In setting a path for the economic policy after independence, Nehru followed a development discourse and model which were current and popular at that time. He truly believed that, like Russia, India needed to develop its heavy industries which were capital intensive. Thus, the initial phase of economic development saw setting up of heavy industries and the construction of dams. He chose from a set of options considerably more limited than those available today, and followed a large degree the conventional wisdom among Indian academic economists of the time. India's growth rate in GDP stayed moderately above 4% during all the years that Nehru was Prime Minister. It is hard to say definitely how much growth there might have been with different economic policies. Predominantly capitalist Western Europe grew slightly faster than India during the Nehru's years, especially during the decade after World War II. But so did the command economies of Communist China and the Soviet Union. The strongly capitalist USA grew somewhat more slowly, as did most of the newly independent nations that followed WWII, with the exception of oil producing nations. The Soviet Union was the only major power during Nehru's tenure to aid India in developing independent capabilities areas of heavy industry, engineering, and technology. This political fact, combined with Nehru's preference for state-led development, promoted suspicions about the sincerity of India's non-aligned foreign policy position. In hindsight, the Nehruvian model failed in many of its objectives. However, many Indian economists, particularly among Nehru's contemporaries, believe Nehru's emphasis on central planning was the right policy for India of that time. Some critics of Indian economic development believe that the economy of the Nehruvian and post-Nehruvian era, with inefficient public sector entities on the one hand and crony capitalist private sector entities on the other, that used so-called license Raj to carve out lucrative niches for themselves on the others, was a product of economic policy foundation laid during Nehru's tenure. India followed policies of import substitution, industrialization, and state intervention in labor and financial markets, a large public sector, overt regulations of business, and central planning. Till 1980s, there was a general tone of economy. The growth rate was steady but not substantially, and it was generally referred to as the Hindu growth rate. Because all other surrounding Asian economies, especially the East Asian tigers, were growing at rapid pace. In 1980s, the first steps towards liberalization was taken up by Indira Gandhi and followed by her son Rajiv Gandhi. This involved easing restrictions on the capacity expansion for incumbent, removed price controls and reduced corporate taxes. The economic liberalization of 1991, initiated by then Indian Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and his Finance Minister Manmohan Singh, in response to the microeconomic crisis, did away with the license Raj, investment, industrial and import licensing, and ended public sector monopoly in many sectors, thereby allowing automatic approval of foreign direct investment in many sectors. Since then, the overall direction of liberalization has remained the same, irrespective of the ruling party at the center, although no party had yet tried to take on powerful lobbying like trade unions and farmers or contentious issues like labor reforms and cutting down agricultural subsidies. In the next section, we will look at two main perspectives which have dominated Indian thinking on industrialization. These perspectives are that of Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. In our course on Sociology on Development, we have detailed discussion on Gandhian perspective. Now let us move to the next point, Gandhi and Nehru on industrialization. There are many approaches, writings and opinions on the issue of development. The more dominant theories of development, which are top-down and industry-oriented, have been criticized and alternatives have been proposed. In the present age of increased awareness of environmental degradation caused by the exploitation of earth's resources and heavy industries that have proved to be more than harmful, the consumerist-oriented approaches of development have come under severe criticism. In this context, Gandhi's view on development have been specially lauded by many. Let us examine the two perspectives. The first is Gandhi, Swadeshi and Khadi. As we mentioned earlier, a lot of thinking on what is the best path for independent India's economy has been in some way or the other informed and influenced by colonial experience. Gandhi believed that India's progress was tied up with its villages. He was distrustful of the overarching powers of the state and conceived of a series of village republics for India. He was not for industrialization, which would destroy traditional handicrafts and artisan and industries associated with them. He strongly believed the concept of self-reliance or Swadeshi. This meant that we as Indians should find sustenance in our efforts, labor and intellect derived from the peoples themselves. Khadi, the hand-spun cloth, symbolized to him the spirit of Swadeshi. Gandhi believed that one need not take recourse to mass production for individual needs, since a lot of life's necessities can be met by production at village level and at individual level. He realized that the state of unemployment in villages can be improved with the setting up of village industries. Though mass-produced items may be cheaper, he believed if we really want the villages to prosper and the subsistence of the poor people taken care, then we are on the path to development. Items such as the spinning wheels, even more than a handloom, were a symbol of self-reliance of the individual and gainful labor and simplicity of living. He cautioned against the modern world's rush towards material wealth. He wondered if this could be seriously counted as human progress. He believed that material progress did not necessarily mean real progress or moral and spiritual progress. He cautioned against blindly applying the West in pursuit of wealth. Gandhi's views are finding special resonance with the people and development practitioners who are looking for alternatives to dominant paradigms of development, which have been top-down approaches and which do not take into the consideration the real needs of people. The idea of decentralized village-level development that Gandhi advocated had special appeal to in this context. Now let us move to Nehru's socialist ideal of industrialization. We have already talked about how Jawaharlal Nehru's vision of restructuring of India's economy was inspired by socialist ideals, especially the Fabian school of thinking, who looked to democratic and gradual change towards a socialist society. Jawaharlal Nehru plays the vital role in formation of the Congress economic policy during national movement. Unlike Gandhi, Nehru's approach for Indian economy was based on firm belief in modern Western ideas of development. He was all for developing India into a modern state. He considered industrialization as crucial prerequisite for the Indian development. He was instrumental in identifying economic goals for India in resolution passed at Karachi session of Congress in 1931. The resolution, among others things, suggested state ownership of major industries, mineral resources, railways, waterways, etc. He wanted the state to take major responsibility for development work. The public sector in free India was an outcome of this thinking. As we already mentioned, the planning of economy was inspired by the Russian system. Nehru was opposed to landlordism and feudal setup. One of the major steps he had taken in his tenure is to abolish of Jamindari system in free India. He was for scientific temper and rational secular outlook and works towards trying to make path for India in this direction. Though there are drastic differences in the approaches of Gandhi and Nehru, it is clear that they both wanted India to come out of the legacy of colonialism towards a path of self-reliance and progress. We have focused a great deal on the history of industrialization in England and in India, but things have been changing since the traditional notion of the factories and industries, which employed people on subsistence level wages for long hours. The production process may have remained the same to some extent, but new technologies, especially communication technology, have dramatically altered not only the economies but lifestyles and geographies of the globe in a big way. Many social thinkers have been pointing out to a post-industrial societies that we live in. In our next section, let us have a brief look at what is meant by a post-industrial society. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.